What did you do for fun when you were a girl?
When I was a little girl
Mm-hmm.
and an older girl.
That too.
Okay, when I was a little girl, I loved to play with my dolls. And I loved to play paper dolls. And then as I got a little older, I learned to sew for my dolls. I made their dresses. And that being able to sew and to make dresses for my little dolls, that gave me the courage when I was older to learn to sew for myself and take classes at school.
Uh-huh.
And I was never afraid to try anything because I had been very successful with my doll dresses. So I loved doing that. When we lived in Albuquerque, we had night games like you play,
Uh-huh.
and I liked that. And we had a vacant lot across the street, and we played work up. Do you know what that is? Okay, that's baseball.
Okay.
Only you don't have a team. You just take turns being everything and hitting the ball and running the bases and come back.
Uh-huh.
And then pretty soon everybody'd change, and you'd always have a chance to play pitch or to catch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that with the neighborhood a lot. And then we had, my sister and I had a bicycle, a second-hand bicycle that my dad got us for Christmas from Santa Claus. And we loved learning how to ride that bicycle and being able to ride it. And another thing that I enjoyed when I was a little girl in Albuquerque, my dad loved to fish. And so we did a lot of camping. He'd go and we'd camp by a stream and he'd go fishing. We'd just look around, and sometimes we'd take a book to read or something, and we'd go up in the mountains. And I can remember waking up in the mornings and my mom was making bacon and eggs and hot chocolate and post them, and it smelled so wonderful. And that's such a fond memory.
Uh-huh.
And then I remember too, we had such a wonderful branch and such good friends there, that on fast Sundays, our whole branch would go up in the Sandia Mountains, was not very far from where we lived.
Uh-huh.
And we would have our fast meeting up there, and then we would all bring a lunch and eat our lunch together. And then sometimes they'd play horseshoes and, things like that up there. And we had such a good feeling. We had such good friends. And one of our friends, one of the families, was the Bushman family. And one of their daughters' name was Joanne Bushman. And she was a little bit younger than Janice and I, and she had an older sister who was Beverly, and she was more our age.
Uh-huh.
And then we had friends named Joanne and Donna Wilson who were our age. And so we had lots of fun. And the Bushman's older sister, Nadine, when my parents would go on really nice conventions with the insurance company that Eddie worked for, Nadine would come and stay with Janice and I.
Mm-hmm.
And so then her little sisters would come and play with us all the time. Well, it so happens that we moved to Denver, and the Bushmans moved to Pueblo, Colorado, and then they moved to to Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanne had, Beverly and Joanne had an older sister named Colleen, who was a very pretty girl and had lots of boyfriends in Albuquerque because there was a Navy base there.
Mm-hmm.
So she had lots of boyfriends. Well, it turned out that after she grew up and was married, she became a counselor to the general president of the primary. This little girl that we had known in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in our little branch.
Wow.
Well, then Joanne grew up. And Joanne got married and had a family. And she became the second counselor to Sister Winder in the General Relief Society presidency.
Wow.
And I have always thought that was absolutely amazing. These two sisters from this tiny little branch in Albuquerque, New Mexico,
Wow.
came to such very important positions in the church, in the women's organizations, from such a small beginning. Well, then Cherie went to Salt Lake to work, and she became friends with Joanne Bushman Doxey's daughter Cindy, and they became very good friends. Well, then brother and sister Doxey were called as temple president in Madrid, Spain. And so they heard that maybe Earl and I would come to a mission there, and that we had already learned Spanish. And so they asked the missionary committee if they would contact our state presidency and see if we would like to come and be in their temple.
That's great.
And so that's what we did. And so Joanne Bushman, my little friend in Albuquerque, was the matron of that temple that I got to work in, and her husband was the temple president. And we're still really good friends, and Cherie lived with Cindy in Salt Lake in Bushman in the Doxey home while we were gone, and she came with Cindy every time Cindy came over to visit her parents. Cherie came to visit us.
Wow, I didn't know
And
that.
it still goes on, because every year President and Sister Doxey, and many times Cindy, and the second counselor in the temple presidency, Brother Harding and his wife, and Sister, and Brother and Sister, what's their name, Cherie? They're the MTC president. Wakefield. President Sister Wakefield. They come every year and stay with us for 2 or 3 days and go to the operas with us. Only this year, Brother and Sister Wakefield aren't going to come because they're the temple president in Columbia,
Wow.
in that temple. So we have enjoyed a long, long, long friendship with the Doxies and those that we learned to love so much in our mission there.
That's amazing.
Okay.